Hey now, welcome back to the Foxhole. Foxtrotting in a Foxhole, Season 10, Episode 12, number 300 overall. Coming to you live on a rather wet Saturday here in the Willamette Valley. From Eagles Nest to Studio B. Always like to thank the folks at Rode and Zoom, other wonderful gear makers, for all the wonderful tools we use in this podcast. Heck yeah. Definitely check out Aftershocks. We dropped, I think, number 29 this week. Definitely doing some stuff with SJ Gets Down, so stay tuned for that. She's released a new episode in the wild. Want to be on this show or Aftershocks or maybe even her show? Drop me a line, 541-525-0896 or FTINFX at gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Okay, let's boogie on with episode 300. So, obviously, tomorrow's the Super Bowl. Later on, we will have our Super Bowl pick. But the NFL, and its never ending desire to reach everyone and have everyone be part of this cult. You know, whether it's Bad Bunny, and I don't give a shit about what your opinion is, Bad Bunny or Erica Kirk's people with Kid Rock doing their thing. Yeah, the world's an exhibition anyway. Let's not get too askew here. But the NFL naming a chief kindness officer. Dar man. This is definitely one of those WTF moments for me. A game that has a very violent nature to it needs a chief kindness officer. I understand. Maybe okay. I think I need to get into this in a closer look a little bit more. But chief kindness officer, and what the hell is that supposed to even do? I get trying to show a more gentle side or reaching to Generation Z and Alpha and Beta. But come on, man. Crazy week, right? All the stuff going on with the Washington Post. You know, basically their sports department, which used to be one of the best in the country, going dark, pretty much going to rely on AI generated stories or folks as part of a really watered down centralized bureau. And what is this world coming to? Why are we allowing this nonsense to happen to ourselves? Good institutions. And is it really getting dumbed down to that point? Apparently so. It's kind of interesting to see Mike Wilbon, who I worked there from 1980 to 2010. You know, basically 30 years. Pretty salty as far as Jeff Bezos goes and the demise of a once great paper. You know, I know from my own personal experience, you know, especially in the digital age, being a Redskins, now Commanders fan, and I used to enjoy throughout the week keep in touch with my team and the great journalists they had. And, you know, for me, I got sour long ago on the Post, you know, once their vendetta, which wasn't really incorrect at the time, against my team, I just got tired of reading all the negative stuff. Yeah, most of it turned out to be true when it came to Dan Snyder, but still, there's only so much you can ingest. My. I hope have an interesting thing to say in the next segment looking at the TV. Anyway, it's just another sad chapter, you know, of this century as far as the decline, you know, of our sports ecosphere. Okay. Boy, I'd be remiss if I did not have a take on this. What the hell is up with the crying game? No, I'm not talking about the darn movie. Talking about all these coaches when they get jobs or they have a moment. Waterworks everywhere. Now I know in this age of really tuning into mental awareness and mental health, people can have their moments, but some of this shit just looks so theatrical to me. And once again, when we're talking about the NFL, when I speak of coaches, this is a violent game we're playing here, man. Let's stop with the whiny bitch ass stuff, okay? Okay, this one kind of slid past me and about everyone else because there's so much shit going on, with the Hall of Fame controversy, so much stuff going on with the Epstein files and its ties to sports. The whole thing with Terry Rozier, what I'm getting at, the long preamble, he's caught up with Chauncey Billups and others, and a gambling probe that sort of disappeared in the ether as far as people talking about it or any details that are readily available. He won his grievance against the NBA, and he's going to get us 28.6 million, which is like, I wonder who was on the grievance board. Obviously, had to be player friendly. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're caught up in some muckety muck stuff. You're rightfully cooling your heels until it gets cleared up, and you still get paid 28.6 million. Which the question begins: you haven't been worth 28.6 in quite some time. The last time I checked, man, said all you need to do is find somebody that'll say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," and sign off on it if it comes to these judges out there. Oh, I know. There's been so much going on. It's like things I have to like come back that happened eons ago, especially doing this show Saturday because I've just been so busy this week with stuff. Just Kerr, Steve Kerr, on the back foot. Now, I will admit in this case where they outkick reporter, he's kind of a plant, and he's going to try to put Kerr on the back foot. But to see somebody who's on the board of directors as far as the woke sports media is concerned, backtrack and kind of admit that he was wrong as far as comments about ICE that he made. Which, to be fair, he definitely said a lot of things do get said in a moment of passion. And yeah, sometimes that we do speak out of turn without really thinking of the ramifications or something like that. If you know Outkick, you can imagine how the question was framed. But yeah, but I think it was kind of nice to see Kerr back off of Mount Olympus for once, get past the Hillary step and get back to base camp and say, yeah, okay, I probably shouldn't have said that. Hmm. What is this shit about Mr. Mahomes Sr.? Not Patrick, because, I just saw Britt. She's going to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated again in her Chiefs themed bikini. Good for Brittany. Not so much for Patrick Sr., the former MLB player. What is he? He was in bracelets again, and it's to my understanding they might be thinking about revoking his is it probation? Yeah. As they say, what do we got coming up? Easter dinner is going to be really entertaining when they all get together, if he's even allowed at this point. And we keep talking about this World Cup that will be here sooner than we think now that we're in February as the Winter Olympics is in full bloom. And yeah, I'm not watching too much of it yet. The World Cup parking at SoFi. I'm seeing prices $200 to $400 per parking at SoFi. Yeah, if you've been to Inglewood, still, come on, man. What is this effing world coming to? And we're allowing this to happen. And because we need gratification, and our lives are so apparently there's a void in our lives where, yeah, $400 for parking, yeah, I'll do it to see a soccer game because I have to have it to get it off my bucket list. Wow, this post-pandemic world just getting freakier and freakier all the time. Speaking of, I saw this on the was it ESPN or no? I think I was watching Channel 30, local news in Fresno. I'm a Central Valley kid, and so on Roku, I watch the local networks of places I live just so I can always keep a pulse. And there was like this ice football in Germany. And I was just like, boy, is this the wackiest thing I've seen all year? Pretty much, obviously the commentators were speaking in German and the spectacle of it all. I'll have to do some more investigation as far as what the real skinny is with that. Okay. Yeah, and let's get really weird before we move on to the 43K view. Let's start with Michelle Tafoya. Yeah, that Michelle Tafoya. You know that whole thing about maybe sometimes you should keep your mouth shut, especially in that state. I mean, don't you learn anything? Wasn't it the announcer from the Wild? No, I think it was a Twins announcer who had to do the mea culpa over demonstrators or paid agitators. And Michelle Tafoya saying if she's elected, that's one of the first things she'll look into. Well, honey, I hate to tell you, you probably won't get elected for senator. The slim chance you had, at least in my somewhat knowledgeable opinion, says you don't get elected at all. Wow. One thing that is cool in the other part of the world. So there's a California Assemblywoman. I don't know what her name is because I didn't do the research. But she's introducing a bill that will place a cap on resale tickets. Oh, I would like to think so. Of course, they'll make it $600 parking to recoup what they're not making when you put a cap on the resale market. But who knows? We can dream, can't we? But yeah, I like where that's going. Okay, what else do we got here? Yeah, there's all kinds of good stuff this week. Gotta give props to the other Sid the Kid, the real Sid the Kid, the one we care about. She's having a baby. But how about the more famous Sid the Kid? Yeah, that's Sydney Sweeney. Gotta love Sid the Kid telling the weirdos to stop politicizing her and stop trying to weaponize her. I'm just a girl having fun, making my money, doing my thing. Leave me the F alone. Good for you, Sid. This is just because you can doesn't mean you have to. This would go out to Sharon Osbourne. Yeah, that's Sharon Osbourne. She's got plans to revive Ozfest. And we have to ask, why? Can't you just repackage it something else? Or do you just have to say, well, this is the spirit of Aussie living on? I don't know. You tell me. FTINFX at gmail.com if you think otherwise. Or leave me a message. 541-525-0896. And this whole Nicki Minaj and Trevor, their little feud. Did you have that on your 2026 scorecard? With Nicki Minaj being a MAGA, going scorched earth on everyone. Yeah. we're, we're like what? About 6 weeks into this year, and that scorecard keeps getting some interesting entries. Okay. Well, when we return, we will take flight and see what's happening on the campuses of America. See you on the other side. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Cold chilling on a Saturday morning, soon to be afternoon, as we're reaching the noon. Doing this episode on a Saturday. Yeah, it's not kind of a week. But we're still putting out lots of content. Tell your friends. Please like and subscribe YouTube channel. You won't get bombarded with anything weird, but just do a brother a favor. Like and subscribe to FTINFX Media's YouTube channel. We'd really appreciate it. Oh, man. Okay. I spoke about this on Aftershocks 29 the other day, but before I speak to it, I guess I do have to get the homies and homettes together so we could actually really get to the Eugene airport quickly, smiling at and high-fiving through TSA till we get to our shimmering Gulfstream 650, G650, sitting on the tarmac. Got to get to our cruising altitude of 43,000 feet. Why? Because we want to take the high view above the campuses of America. Now back to what I was saying. Well, this week, high above campuses, there was a lot of storm clouds. We get some clarity. We never know what's going to happen with these judges. Like I said, I spoke about this on Aftershocks 29. The case of Amari Bailey, kid that played at UCLA, played 10 games in the NBA. Obviously wasn't good enough. Well, if he was, he'd still be in the NBA, wouldn't he? Wanting to go back to freaking college. Yeah, it was like watching the Coach JB and Smitty show this week several times. I don't watch it that often because there's so much I can ingest and do my own stuff. And they're like spot on with all these mofos that don't want to just want to hang out in college and compete against the kids and get paid lots of money. How, as I've been saying for how long, the adults need to get in the MFN room and put an end to this nonsense. And it did happen in the case of Shamlis, the kid from Ole Miss, who was trying to get a sixth year. Because he had played 2 years at Ferris State, Division II, won a national championship. Yeah, you know all the details. But the judges just said, no, you can't. No, it's time for you to move on. And that's a victory for the NCAA and the universities. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this kid. It's a fascinating, because I'm sure, as I said on Aftershocks, the idea of somebody gets it in their head, or somebody puts it in their head, like, why not push the boundaries? Because you all didn't establish what those boundaries were. And maybe, the more I think about it, not so much being afraid of the kids and the agents, you're afraid of what might get stuck down as unconstitutional and powerless to do anything about it anyway. So you've got to close your eyes and hope it will go away. It isn't going away. But I think this is going to be a very big case, and I get the sense the universities are going to win. There's going to be, in this particular case of this kid who already played 10 games in the pros. Now, he might find some whiny judge that says, oh, you were exploited and you didn't know what you were doing when you left school early. And yes, the Big Ben NBA, where you obviously sucked if you only played 10 games. I don't want to disparage the brother that hardcore by saying he sucked. But 10 games is your career and you still trying to come back to college means you probably weren't very good. And chances are if you go back to school beating up on these kids, what the F is that going to prove? Probably going to prove that you still are not NBA worthy. Just friggin' sad. All right, they got to move on. Florida State, and I think I've got these numbers correct, they are reporting a $437 million athletic related debt. $500,000 since, what was that? Yeah. You gotta see. Point being is, yeah, they've coughed up almost $500 million in debt. There's several other schools that I was reading about as well. And it keeps going back to what we've spoke to since this podcast began, 300 episodes. The sustainability of all of this. I mean, what the hell, boys and girls? And if they're running a $500 million deficit, what's going on with the rest of the programs at Florida State? They've got endowments in these universities. I would like to think, that those things are protected, and that's why people are reaching out to private equity funds about to sell your soul to somebody in Saudi or Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Qatar, blah, 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 on and on. Not disparaging that either. It's the reality of it, but you still have to wonder. That's the only way it's going to be sustainable, because you can't continue to run deficits like this and it not impact everything else at these institutions, right? Okay. We'll be talking more about that the more we hear stories along those lines. What's interesting, and this is another thing I picked up from watching some of the podcast on YouTube this week. Let's face it, daytime television is getting very insufferable. I can't watch Barstool. I can't watch the ESPN circus. Can tolerate First Things First a couple of times a week, but I'm still like everybody else. Since I'm a work from home kind of person, and I'm now more interested in getting my content from these shows on YouTube. They're just way better than the crap that's on TV. And it's unfiltered as opposed to having someone like Coward just sitting there bloviating over and over about how smart I am because Sam Darnold's in the Super Bowl and Bo Nix was, and I saw it before you did. And you have to hear about it for 3 or 4 hours. Ugh. Okay, I know. I had to get that right. Get the train back on the tracks. But yeah, National Signing Day. So all these people have been talking about on these shows. And how it didn't move the needle because we've been so consumed with NIL, the transfer portal, and all the steam is already taken out of what used to be kind of the biggest day of the offseason, really when the offseason began. And it goes across the board these days without even a whimper. Crazy how quickly that changed. Am I lying? Okay. And then this is another thing of insanity. I don't know how I feel on this, but apparently there's going to be no New Year's college football playoff game to avoid competing against the NFL, which many people say, well, this is just your typical prime Thursday night game. And it's going to be where, more than likely, a third string quarterback playing against a second string quarterback at that point. What the fuck do you mean, no CFP game on New Year's Eve? But the thing is, where we would be in that round, would that be a good game? Yeah, that would probably be a good game in that round. So, boo, give us something, because you never know with the variables as far as NFL seasons go, how that Thursday night matchup would look up. Because obviously, I think it's a Thursday night. And so, yeah, I'm not too keen. I think you should deprive us of having a game on New Year's Eve where we can have that little appetizer before watching our jam bands or going out to a party and hopefully not getting a DUI at. Yeah. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, my last episode of Aftershocks, I talked about Ty Sampson, right, who's being offered lots of money, but wanting to stay at Alabama. More I think about it, not wanting to stay at Alabama, but not wanting to take the money and hurt his legacy. That somebody that cares about their legacy. I said the more I think about it, the more I like this kid. You see Lincoln Riley on the herd this past week. I mean, maybe the one day that I did. He's talking about, how he's in favor of all these changes. And I said, okay, if you're in favor of all these changes, well, Mr. Riley, where are the results? Everybody keeps wanting you to become an elite program again, and it just hasn't happened. As everybody else gets wiser and thinks they could be Indiana, maybe you don't get to be relevant again. Ooh. Boy, we got a tight one with Oregon and Purdue. All the shit I've been saying about Dana. Now look at the Ducks rising. Well, I'll tell you about that, how it turns out in the second here. All right. Off the radar, Red Hawks and Cats are still undefeated last time I checked. I think an interesting story as far as the hoops go. Mellow, that mellow. No, that mellow. Carmelo Anthony being really pissed off at his alma mater. His son plays there. And that Syracuse, they ain't even on the continent anymore. As far as how far they've fallen off the damn radar. And apparently Carmelo Anthony is speaking his mind on that. Go figure. Can't blame him. He brought them their only love as a freshman, and to see the program hit the skids like this, I'd be pretty pissed too. Wonder if he's got his NIL collective, and if so, is he just saying, no, maybe I'll hold my dollars back. Melo all over the place this week, hanging out with Caitlin Clark and Reggie Miller, Maria Taylor. You see the one with the Tuskegee University coach? This is like Tuskegee University and Morehouse College. But Benji Taylor, I think his name was, getting the bracelet slapped on him. I guess he, got a little too surly. It's all part of the clip. But like, man, how do you end up as a coach with the bracelets on your ass after a game? Mm. Speaking of dirty play, I thought that was kind of interesting as far as the whole rivalry with Michigan State and Sparty, and both coaches accusing their teams of dirty play. Love it. The gamemanship that is hanging out there as we are now in February, which means, yeah, we're, another 5 or 6 weeks and we're going to be talking tournament time. So it's kind of nice to see college basketball, even though it ain't moving the needle on the men and women. You're starting to see things get a little bit testy. And we've got some undefeated teams rocking. It's looking at the Ducks trying to pull off the improbable. Pretty tight. So the Ducks are trailing by 2. There's like 8 seconds left to number 12 Purdue. Ducks are on the road. A little for us on the West Coast. A little brunch affair. But anyways, probably won't get to that until the next segment as far as how it turns out, because apparently Oregon's going to the line here. So let's see. All right, folks, we're going to get the plane down, taxi, hop back in an Uber, sprint back to the studio, and we'll come back with something you should probably know momentarily. Yeah. What's happening? Welcome back to the Foxhole. Cold chilling. The Ducks were not able to pull off the upset at Purdue. Number 12 ranked Purdue. End up losing by 4, 68-64. Was that now 8-15, 1-12 or something like that in the Pac-12, in the Big Ten, excuse me. Ooh. And perfect timing. See, we get CBS switches to the party down in Scottsdale. One of the best parties in all of sports. When everybody gets down and I'm watching all the people in all their fine costumes and all kinds of get-ups with Miss Amanda B leading us in today's telecast. Is that my man Keegan Bradley? Groovy. But let's see here. Let's get to one of my favorite segments. Something you should probably know. Or things you should know or even care about that happened this past 8 or 9 days in the world of sports. This we're coming to you late this week. Right, the Aussie final wrapped up last weekend. Gotta mention that. Hats off to Miss Rabinka taking down our girl Miss Sabalenka. Very impressive there. And of course, Mr. Alcaraz taking down Joker as Mr. Big predicted to me, because I consulted with Mr. Big before both of these finals, and he called them both pretty much correctly. So give him props there. Our friend of the Foxhole, who's our expert on tennis. But yeah, major flowers go out to both of them, taking the first major of the year. Alcaraz completes the career Grand Slam. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, seeing we're chilling, seeing that my man Scotty Scheffler's -4. But how about the performance that Justin Rose put on at Torrey Pines last week? It's just cold chilling. I got to play that. It's kind of cool that Golf Plus added North Torrey Pines. And apparently they're getting ready to move away from the headset and become more of a sim. Man, if they can keep it affordable, that's going to be the bomb. You know I'll be talking about that. A little shout out to Nelly Corda. Ooh. She won the range shortened LPGA opener that was in Florida last weekend. But I'm just looking over here at the leaderboard. I haven't seen it yet today. See that my man Matsuyama up there at -11. I think there's quite a few people. Scotty, he's like 7 or 8 strokes behind. Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, Sam Burns, and Tony Finau missed the cut at -1. Yeah, we'll be talking more about the WM Phoenix Open episode 301. It's cool to see Tiger at the TGL event in Florida, looking in good spirits, cheering his team on. Still ain't nobody care about no TGL, as we like to say, British Petroleum. Talked on Aftershocks about Sam Ruthie. Dude's such a badass. 348.8. Yeah. I know. Gonna have to get the corner man on the show here real quick. I need to set that up. But it's going to be interesting as far as NASCAR is concerned. Kind of finding some more disheartening news as far as Denny Hamlin is concerned. He had the tragic fire, that took his mom's life and injured his dad, or the other way around. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I may have the details wrong here, but Guess he was expecting some fire damage and he fell and messed up his shoulder. Says he'll drive this season, but he's gonna be driving in some serious pain. So I'll definitely have to get some more insights about that when we speak with the cornerman pending. I just gotta figure out the when and how. Okay. Then we got our girl Lindsey Vaughn. Wow. You know, she had the accident, suffered some damage to, I don't know, is it her MCL? She's wearing a brace. I'm out there trying to crush it. And to me, this is just the way my twisted mind thinks. She's just like, oh hell, if I'm going to let Michaela Schifrin get all the love. This is my last rodeo, and there's no way if I'm going to let her be the queen. And she's making her point to make sure that she's getting her shine. Almost, Michaela's less like, yeah, but I'm the one that's really happening here. That's our girl, Michaela Schifrin. I know, I'm terrible. Okay, so let me digress here for a minute. It's been kind of quiet as far as something you should probably know segment this week. Let's just take a moment here and reflect on finally reaching 300 episodes of Foxtrotting in a Foxhole. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, y'all. From when we started this way back, late spring, early summer 2020, and what was going on in the world. Obviously, deep in the throes of what was known as the pandemic, and all the changes that were brought about. And I sit there and, do some reflections. I was having a conversation, which we may or may not make it to air, with SJ. He was kind of interviewing me and asking me about, what have I found to be the most interesting thing. I told her there's so many things, but mainly the change that's happened in college sports, with obviously NIL, the transfer portal, and the madness that's come along with it. And that's been a big thing. I also feel this whole trans war, in both cases with college athletes in the trans war, where I pointed out early that the adults needed to get in the room for sanity and they didn't, and now we have nothing but chaos and acrimony all over the place. Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I do think certain things have become more crystal clear, like All-Star games and Pro Bowls don't matter and should be done away with, and are absolute two shams of a mockery of the biggest travesty sham. Yeah, no, I'm not Woody Allen. No, not even close. Oh man, I'm gonna cough on that one. Let's see here. But yeah, when we sit back and look at all of this stuff, there's just been so many interesting things. We kind of went from playing in bubbles and baseball complexes in Disney World to charging $300 for parking at an upcoming World Cup because, gee, entertainment was taken away from us. And by golly, if it ever happens again, I'm going to cherish every moment. So I'm willing to pay insane amounts of money and willing to, because I need gratification, just forget about what is sane, what is probably right in this world. All of these things have kind of happened in this little window of 300 episodes. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 300. Definitely looking forward to doing aftershocks and the scene and SJ gets down and all the fun things that are happening as far as what I do in the pod sphere. This is really fun, especially for those of us, that come on and hung out and talked and all this blah blah blah. Let's not get mushy here. Yeah, keep the train on the tracks. But yeah, it's good. We're hoping that this experience gets better. Thanks for putting up with it for 300 episodes. Some of the technical gaffes and all the other silliness and the flakiness, because we are humans and I'm human. All right, so we're gonna definitely keep rocking it, and We just have to see what happens here, as this chaos takes a whole another turn, apparently. Stay tuned, folks. Next 300 episodes should be wonderful, but so far it's been a heck of a ride. Let's keep it coming. We'll be back with the NBA beat when we return. All right. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Cold chillin' on a gray, wet Saturday in the Willamette Valley, watching a little bit of the WM Phoenix Open with Mr. Matsuyama and Mr. Kim. And gosh, I can't see who's else is out at minus 11, but there's a three-way tie. We got somebody at Belta at 10. Okay, somebody Matt Fitzpatrick at 9. So yeah, it's a Tune Rio is at minus 11. So interesting stuff on top of the leaderboard in Phoenix. Okay, let's talk some NBA beat after that little awkward homage to my doing 300 episodes. Yeah, I know that came across a little weird and cringy. Yeah, it even happens here occasionally. All right, let's go to the association. Man, the trade line came and went, and there was some earth-shattering stuff. We spoke about it on Aftershocks 29, and now we've had a few more minutes to digest this, and it's still pretty crazy as far as AD going to Washington after only playing 29 games for the Mavericks. A lot of recriminations all over the place. Folks are just mind blown, especially with the emergence of Cooper Flag and what that all could mean. And I thought about this more and more, and I was kind of talking with my bro Jeff. He was asking me a question about it, I guess, and I was kind of going back and forth. And I thought the only way this makes sense, because right, they should have run this back, perhaps let Kyrie get healthy with AD, who when he does want to play, and he has played in 75 games in a season recently, we know that's kind of an anomaly when it comes to the unibrow. When Kyrie, whenever he decides to come back, wouldn't you want to give that a chance, especially with the emergence of Cooper Flag? I'm thinking, with Mark Cuban back in the building and apparently taking more of an active role, he just goes, F this nonsense. Let's just blow it up. We definitely have a rising star in Cooper Flag because the guy's flat out balling. We talked about this, the Aftershocks, how crazy, no Caitlin Clark effect going on there. But we just get the sense that maybe there are some adults in the building in Dallas. And just really took a hard look at what do we really want. And on the other side of the coin, Washington, why not make a run? You've got an emerging star in Mr. Sarr. It's Trae Young and AD get healthy. You may have an interesting team. And in the Eastern Conference, which we know is kind of chicken and dumplings at this point, especially once you get past especially with Hallie out in Indiana, after you get past maybe 3, yeah, why not the Wizards trying to be competitive and giving the folks in the DMV something to actually care about for once, as opposed to the putrid basketball they've been seeing in recent years. So we get it. Harden to Cleveland and Garland to Los Angeles, the Clippers. Yeah, somebody make sense of that one for me, please. Cleveland. I've been hard on them, as you know, talking about their 68 wins and they don't put the fear in anything. Because notice when I just mentioned the East, when I thought about three teams, they weren't one of them. Right, because I think it's, Detroit, Boston, and New York. And then after that, well, people in Philly are about to put their dukes up, go, hey, the Sixers are playing good, dude. But do I believe in them? Or do you? Anyways, the Cavaliers. Okay, this is such a Cavaliers-y move. I don't know what that means for LeBron being able to return there again. But do they really think he's going to be the difference? And I know people say stop assassinating about his playoff failures. Hey, bro, that's all we got. And if you're going to acquire him thinking that he could get you over the hump, especially taking on his moodiness, not saying that when he is on, he can't make things happen. But when it matters, it never does. Am I lying? Okay. How about Paul George getting 25 games for a drug violation? No, it's not the yay. No, he's not getting all looped up on Molly. It was some prescription thing that he wasn't supposed to take. Him and his people consulted the wrong people, apparently, and he's getting 25 games. So instead of pandemic P, he's now prescription P. Terrible, right? Hey, I think about the trade deadline. There's a lot of folks that moved. Interesting, all kinds of weird shit going on. Fucking Lonzo Ball ending up in Utah. Kuminga and Buddy Hield getting moved. One of the things that cracked me up is Dennis Schroeder being moved again. I just think about his comments about, being in the NBA is being on it like a slave ship. Damn, Dennis, I don't know how many slave ships there were where you get to get paid handsomely. And in your case, had the opportunity to take an $84 million bag at one point, have access to all kinds of beautiful IG models that want to take your money in every city, and that's riding on the slave ship. Okay. Well, gee, maybe some of us should be so fortunate to ride on a slave ship with those kind of accommodations. Wow. Jason Kidd, who probably had several Hennessy's once he got AD out the building, him getting assessed a $35K fine. Once again, I say, man, you guys should be giving this money to the Foxhole, man, instead of getting assessed by Commissioner Silver. But I'm thinking of this, are we really that petty? And the saltiest this world is now, and when it comes to y'all being in bed with gambling partners and this big gambling scandal, are we really fighting somebody for using profane language? Gee, I guess I should talk a little bit about some things on the court, huh? It's good to see the Joker back. When they edged the Clippers, that was a good game. The Hornets, got to keep an eye on them, even though they're in the East, but they've been fun as of late. Let me see here real quick. Doing some adjustments. I didn't set my board up correctly. Standings. See, this is what happens when you have an assistant. You have to look shit up. Yeah, they're still balling. The Hornets were 9-1 in their last 10. Just saying. It is the East, but they could be a lot of trouble for teams that aren't keeping an eye out for them at the topper end of the Eastern Conference bracket. The Knicks beating the Lakers to the Garden. The Lakers getting Austin Reeves back and beating the Sixers. Still not really too high on the Lakers. I know they made a trade sending Gabe Vincent. I forget who they got, but apparently better shooting. But isn't that what Gabe Vincent was supposed to do for the Lakers? But some folks think it'll help their perimeter game. But I know, and Laker fans know, that anybody who's a shooter, the minute they come to the crypt, they forget their outside game and become Clankology 101. Yeah, good week for the Knicks, even though last night wasn't so good. They did beat the Nuggets in double overtime. That was a thriller. But then they got hammered by the Pistons last night. And it was like 118 to 90. Yeah. I had mentioned on Aftershocks 29 about Unrivaled getting 21K at the doubleheader event, big event in Philly. There's a big thing going on this weekend. I'm going to be really curious. Nobody still cares what's going on. Although it's always good to see Sandra Citrone lighting it up. Because we like Sandra Citrone. But yeah, no traction other than certain people in the WNBA saying we're ready to strike. Well, hell, we've been ready to strike since you started wearing "pay us what you owe us" stuff. Caitlyn coming on TV last week, still being optimistic. I mean, we're getting into that no person's lags. We're starting to see. I saw the Portland Fire unveil their uniforms. I'm like, well, where's the damn season at? And if you run one of these venues, you're just like, man, we got these pending dates. Y'all need to get on off your asses and make something happen. Okay, I'll leave you with this one. This is Sam Count. Our girl Cameron Brink, yeah, that Cameron Brink, saying, of course I would pose in Playboy, but I'd have to ask my boyfriend. Hee 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 hee. Maybe you stop. Is it about basketball or modeling? Okay, we know why Kaiser Ray Gondorsak posed in Playboy because she ain't good enough to be in the WNBA. And she's got to do something for clicks. But you, Cameron Brink, you're supposed to be a basketball player. Forget about posing in Playboy. Forget about modeling. You get enough likes and weird simps anyways. Focus on you and Kelsey Plum making the Sparks a worthy challenger to the Aces. That's my thought for you, Miss Cameron Brink. Okay, folks, when we come back, we will go pitch side and talk some beautiful game live. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Coming to you for the 300th time. Lovely thing. Yeah, keep an eye on Aftershocks 30, which should come out, our post Super Bowl edition, where we'll have our ransom raves. Keep an eye out on maybe some cool content that we're trying to put together for the Super Bowl, if that happens, if I ever feel up to it. Been so out of sync this week. Anyways, let's go pitch side and see what's up today. So what is all this stuff with CR7? Ronaldo. Yeah, that Ronaldo. Not the other Ronaldo, this Ronaldo. CR7. And he's boycotting his team in Saudi. Basically wanting changes, or he might take his ball elsewhere in June. I know there are people in MLS. I know my people, the black and gold of LAFC, are like, come on, pair him with Sonny. I'm just like, he ain't coming to no LAFC, people. Shut the F up. He's kind of made it clear. I don't think he wants to share the same last lap with Messi. Yeah. I mean, it'd be cool if he did, but I'm not holding my breath, MLS fans, as far as that goes. I think it is interesting that he's kind of pouting after with all those big bags of money that he has snatched over in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. Mm-mm. Some really good CCL action this week, huh? You see Pumas and SDFC This is, Pumas, a Liga MX squad in San Diego in its second year. And San Diego just raining down the friggin' goals, man. And I was like, well, in the second half, it ended up by being, I think, 4-1. And of course, if I wasn't looking hard, I would have never known that the stuff was even going on. Good job, Garber, as far as that goes. Can't wait to see LAFC's turn in this tournament. I don't understand why even the soccer peanut galleries don't care about it. How you're always claiming about football proper not getting its due respect in the United States. Well, it's because flippant mofos like you don't bother watching CONCACAF Champions League. And that's a travesty to me. And I'll never stop saying it. Okay. What else do I have? The PFA, which is a British Players Union, is seeking to introduce standards to reduce headers in British soccer. They want to get rid of them pretty much at the lower levels. Why? Reduce the probability of you getting CTE along the lines. Once again, player safety. I'm sure boomers out there with their sack lunch and their scarf for their mates are really screaming bloody murder about that. What? Are we going to all of a sudden have AI bots playing football proper game matches? Okay. Well, it is interesting that I was talking about CR7, Ronaldo, that Benzema has jumped teams instead of going back to Europe. He's like, hey, I'm going from one big bag of cash to an even bigger bag of cash. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Okay. So I know over in EPL, I haven't had a chance to unpack anything today. Or the Caribou Cup, blah, 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 Copa this and Copa that. I do know that United is still rolling under Michael Carrick. And they're going to have to make a decision if he's going to be the man, which I think they should. Haven't seen United look this good in quite some time. The big matchup, City and Spurs, where they ended up like 2-2. The Reds, Blues, and Gunners also were chilling though. Last time I checked, I know Barca leads by 1 after them and Los Blancos both won last weekend. PSG ahead of its big clash, League Classique tomorrow with Marseille. They were down a man after total BS red card was given to Hakimi. But yeah, down a man, they were able to win at Strasbourg. Much needed win for the Red and Blue because they haven't been playing that great. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, I'm so out of sync and kind of following other things. I haven't really done my hardcore LAFC dive yet. Kind of watching some of the podcasts because everybody, their brother has an LAFC podcast. But this whole thing about Denny Bawanga possibly leaving LAFC and going to Brazil, and I was thinking, what the hell do I think about that? This is a tough one. I mean, I get it, I suppose, for him, but I'm thinking, man, you're paired up with Mr. Sonny. You guys have one of the more exciting attacks in the whole MLS. I mean, that high-flying act is on par with what the champs down there in Miami with Messi are doing. It's just as compelling to watch. I guess going to Brazil does what for you, Denny? And my bigger question, and I know a lot of LAFC fans will be asking the same thing, why would we let him walk up the building? How'd that work with Chichi Arango, Mr. Thornton? And speaking of Brazil, I got to thinking about this too the other day. Neymar, he's 34. And I remember him, he was still in his early 20s playing in the Tulum tournament. It's like going, wow, what is Neymar doing playing with the juniors? And the bet of an eyelash, he's 34. And at least in the time I've been watching the beautiful game live, and I've always told you, well, I came to this sport a little bit late. He's got to be one of the more disappointing stories in terms of the talent we thought he had and all the championships he would win. But I did mention earlier in this podcast about Ronaldo and Messi having a nice last act. Messi in MLS after a brief stint in Paris, along with Neymar. And obviously Ronaldo just chilling over there in Saudi. And I'm kind of wondering, does Neymar have a last act, or is he just going to be one of the more disappointing stars that should have been that wasn't? Okay. Another conversation I've been having. So, when I pay attention to like some of the lower leagues, especially ones that have got a lot of Yankee backing, obviously Wrexham comes to mind. Obviously the folks that TB12 are affiliated with, and others. I was sitting there thinking about that because I kind of always have followed in the corner of my eye. I'm a big PSG fan, but there are other teams that I do follow and know more than I should about. And the Blackburn Rovers are definitely one of those teams. Blackburn won the Premier League in 1995. And, ever since they've been owned by Vinkies, an Indian chicken company, they've fallen on very hard times. And I just think about their juxtaposition versus Wrexham, who right now would probably be in the playoff to get into the Premier League. And their continual trajectory, with the backing, from the Americans. And it's just like, okay, if that's possible, then why is Blackburn right now facing relegation back to League One? That's happened to them before. They haven't been in the Premier League in a long, long time. And it just fascinates me when it comes to these lower leagues, where is it a matter of it being poorly run? Especially in this day and age with so much money being poured into these clubs. It's boondoggle for foreigners, athletes, and actors to have a piece. So when I look at a Blackburn, I'm like going, how do I see your fortunes continuing to go further south when there's enough money in this game to have a good product and have a reasonable trajectory? You shouldn't be going downward. You should be going upward like Wrexham. But I know there's a lot of moving parts, and when it comes to how these clubs are run, yeah, there's definitely, as Lee and Adam will tell you, lots of stories to be told. Lee and Adam, friends of the show that came on and talked about Pro Rel a little while back. Go check that episode back, for kicks and giggles if you like. All right, folks, we're moving along here. When we come back, we'll talk some Nightfall of Diamonds. All right, then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here, kicking it on a smooth gray Saturday. Watching a little golf at the WM Phoenix Open. Water leaderboard here with 3 guys at minus 11, led by Mr. Matsuyama, and 3 more at minus 10. So we're going to have an interesting, I don't know, what we say, maybe 27 holes of golf left at the biggest party in golf. Woohoo! Yeah, early morning beers, Bloody Marys, and mimosas to take off that Friday night fog. Alrighty, here, let me get set up here. Yeah, it's been interesting how subdued up to the Super Bowl has been. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but okay. Let's do a little dark star crashing. It's Nightfall of Diamonds, and we start this segment off talking a little hippy dippy before we really get to baseball. But let's go on the hippie side of the equation first. Okay. Fish closes down Mexico with some really big jams. I know that's been a hot minute since it's been over, it seems like. Still need to go back and unpack that I've heard the ocean sing. That was really big. They had like a 4-song second set. What was that? Was that night 2 or night 3? But all in all, it looks like the Fish Kids there and on tour, as we like to say, as far as couch tour is concerned, came away, smiles, looking forward to when Fish reconvenes at the Spear in the springtime. That's going to be a lot of fun. Biscuits are getting ready to go on Jam Cruise. They played a show last night. I have not had a chance to watch. I'm going to on demand as I probably get ready for Super Bowl prep and working on some other content projects today, hopefully. Yeah, I know I got a lot of stuff. There's so many things that happened since the last episode that somehow I've got to squeeze into these next episodes as far as things we want to talk about. Jeez. See, what else do we have here as far as the Dark Star crashes go? Haven't heard anything, big from the dead camp in the wake of Bobby's passing. They say it's just going to be curious to see how that tribe and that entity itself, what does it shape next? I know Joey Russo's Almost Dead's coming here to Eugene. Who knows? Maybe push comes to shove, if there's tickets available, or go hang out in the lot. I mean, I've seen Almost Dead before. It's okay. But then again, as somebody will always tell you, there are so many dead cover bands from fair to middling to, all right, that you can see for a hell of a lot less than what you're going to pay for seeing Joey Russo's Almost Dead or Dark Star Orchestra, or one of these other established dead tribute acts. Who knows? Maybe Mayer and company will do something. Because I see that Otel's been playing with Phil's kid Graham. So we shall see. Summer's coming. Okay, we'll park the bus. Let's talk some real Nightfall of Diamonds. Because Dark Stars do eventually crash. Yeah, this Emmanuel Clase, the kid from the Guardians, him and the other guy, Ortiz, I believe it is, that are all caught up in this pitch rigging probe, controversy, travesty, whatever you want to label it. Well, apparently there's information now that's coming out that says he's been rigging pitches in at least 48 games over the last 2 seasons. Which makes me think, how big is this ring? How many other people are tied into it? How much of a commonality is this? I don't know what the hell that mean by that, but really, I'm just saying, how common is this? Because I do not feel this is an outlier. Not even remotely close. You think 48 games, you're rigging pitches over 2 seasons. And as asked before, who else has tapped into it? I just don't think these are a bunch of jamokes who somehow got caught. Time will tell. I mean, baseball did what they thought they could as far as putting caps on prop bets. We'll see how much of a turn that is, or is there enough stuff going on the black market? Because if you take something away and people like it, they'll always find a way to do it. Okay. 48 games over 2 seasons, though, man. Okay. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Shohei Ohtani will not be pitching in the WBC. Of course. I mean, sure, if you're Friedman and Mark Walter, you're like, I don't really want him to be playing in any of it. We want to win a world championship. But yeah, that's wise, I suppose, as far as trying to maintain the wear and tear on the 21st century's Babe Ruth. Fair enough. Yeah, it's pretty summer one to pass on. Obviously, folks that are my age or of that generation, even this kind of like is from the time when I first really started knowing what even sports was. But Mickey Lolich, 3-time All-Star, 1968 MVP, and the catalyst behind the Tigers upending the defending champion St. Louis Cardinals and Bob Gibson, passed away this week. Definitely a Detroit legend. Al Kaline, things like that. Willie Horton. But yeah, our condolences go out to his family, friends, and the folks in Tiger Nation. Great Tiger has exited the building. Okay, let's go through some fun stuff here. I think there's an interesting debate going on, and this is something I haven't really mused much about in recent years. I used to do it a lot, especially when there was a major difference between the National League and the American League with the designated hitter and all that good stuff. Now the way things are, I haven't really thought this. Which league is stronger? Is it the NL or the AL? I mean, obviously, the Dodgers being in the NL certainly helps, but there were some really good teams in the NL. There's some really good teams in the AL. You baseball folks out there, give me your thoughts as to who is the stronger league right now, mid-2020s, based on what you know, what you see. I'm curious. For me, I don't really know. I mean, I'm obviously going to think the Dodgers winning the last two and some good competition along the way, that the pendulum has swung towards the NL. But I'd love to hear some other opinions on that subject. Speaking of the Giants, signing 3-time batting champ Luis Arias to a 1-year deal. Buster Posey quietly putting together the pieces to take on the Dodgers and the Padres. Could be an interesting spring and the summer on the coast. Y'all watch any of this Caribbean World Series that's going on? I mean, I tried to catch it. This is Mexico and Panama. But heck, Mexico was winning like 11-1. I'm just like, I can't watch this. And everybody still looks like they have been enjoying the carne asadas and all the other good food, sopas and stuff. Yeah. Some thick bodies playing in that game. Definitely not pitchers and catchers report body types yet. Also was fascinated that the Rays, we always keep an eye on stadium construction and development. The Rays released renderings of their proposed ballpark that they've been trying to find forever. This is the site I mentioned over there. What is it? I think Hillsborough College, which is near where Steinbrenner Park is and pretty close to Raymond James Stadium. It's an interesting design. I would kind of say it's like a scaled down version of what SoFi looks like. You got the translucent roof. Looks kind of cool. And obviously, the nice entertainment shopping district that we're always speaking of. It's truly going to be a part of the experience. And you have to love the peanut gallery. Well, when I was growing up, I remember it was just about going to the baseball game. Now it's just way more of an experience than the game itself. Yeah, Einstein, I think that's what they're trying to achieve, to maximize your dollar. Because the last time I checked, it is a business. It was a business then, and it's even more so now. Get over yourself. Wow. How about this one? So I think I spoke about when the White Sox, because I'm always keeping an eye on these talents coming from Asia. The guy Muntaka Murakami, who signed with the Chicago White Sox, I guess due to his request, he's having all in the clubhouse. All the toilets are going to have bidets. Yeah, I know. Who knew? Okay, let's hop on the Zamboni and take a quick ride around what we call the ice rink of life. You know, the power rankings stayed the same. I was looking at that when I was putting this outline together. When obviously the Avs are in the penthouse, and the Sabres, in their hot streak, they're down at 6, and the usual suspects in between, the Canes, the Wild, the Lightning, but pretty much unchanged right now as far as somebody making a move and somebody sneaking up to snatch Lord Stanley's cup. All right, folks, when we return, we'll throw a closer look at you. We'll see what we got going on there. Be back momentarily. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Ken Harlan here, doing the Boogie Bang beat on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah. Time to opinionate, editorialize, talk a little trash, speak the mind, or just get off the tracks. We'll see what happens with this one. A closer look coming at you in episode 300. Well, unless you've been living under a rock, and most of you probably haven't been living under a rock, and if you have, you still couldn't have missed all the drama associated with the Epstein files. No, this isn't going to be a rant on Jeffrey Epstein and what people may or not know. Blah blah blah. Other podcasts, other weirdos I know that continue to whine about that. But it has been an interesting intersection of sports and the Epstein files that have surfaced here in the last couple of drops that the JD has provided everyone. I think it's the Justice Department who's providing all this information. Anyway, part of the scenery. Steve Tisch, pretty much having to go all mealy mouth. My man Josh Harris, also implicated. But everybody quickly to say, well, they knew him. They knew him and Ghislaine. But was never on Epstein Island, never did this, never did that. A lot of denying with the Hollywood guy. Is it Ratner, who says he never knew him, but there's a picture of him making out with somebody sitting next to him and some other, just on and on. So I don't know what to think, because the weirdo sports fans, they'll come up with all kinds of nonsense. Like Commanders fans, well, gee, maybe if he's connected to the Epstein files deep enough, he'll be forced to sell the team and we can get our Redskins back. I mean, you got delusional shit like that going on, which I just like, okay. But it is kind of interesting, all these connections that are appearing as all these files get released and people go process them. Because, our obsession with people getting that young love apparently has no boundaries, no basement or ceiling when it comes to whatever wet desires people are trying to get from this. Oh no, I need to know what's in those files. But yeah, it's interesting to see, all of these people, and there's an intersection. And my deduction is the guy knew people, and there's quite a circle when it comes to them, and that have all those big bags of cash that SJ gets down is always talking about. So it shouldn't be surprising that in these connections, I mean, good grief, wasn't there one with somebody who tried to sell, or Epstein was trying to sell him a plane, but he wasn't really interested in it, but somehow that people in the dark web, there has to be a connection somewhere there. It has to be more than a plane. I'm like, no, people with money tend to intersect a lot. They ain't hanging out with you or I, because most of us, we ain't got that kind of money. So I just think it's shocking. I mean, I'm not sitting here, clowning all of you folks that are recessing. I gotta get my humor in, whatever. Needs to get out to get the victims justice, you know, full speed ahead as far as that's, concerned, right? If it's not a witch hunt and you are a part of the bad behavior narrative, well, you know what I've been saying going back early in this 300 episode journey about that. Yeah? But, when I sit there and wonder, if, like in the case of Bill Gates, and, everybody rushing back and trying to sanitize whatever involvement you had with that man and that woman and all the things they say that went down. Some of you folks are moving faster than Carl Lewis could have ever dreamed of. For Quincy Wilson, now that we're 2020s, like, oh no, I never, I knew the man and, we hung out. I know what, Casey Wasserman, head of the 2028 LA Olympic Committee. Him and Ghislaine were exchanging a lot of steamy texts, but I didn't do anything wrong either. I'm ashamed. I shouldn't have to give up my job. Come on, y'all can't be that bloodthirsty, can you? I don't know. Stay tuned. This is surely going to get more shadier and a lot more damning before we're all done. Okay. I talked about a lot of this in the last episode. Now, this one as well coming up. Let me grab my phone that fell on the floor to help me out here. I need a prop for this part of the story. But the Hall of Fame, or the Hall of Popularity, I guess is what it should be called. I don't. This is a tough one here. I think it's mainly when it comes to trying to decide people from other eras. When you're trying to go retroactive, I think some interesting points have been made this week. I've heard some folks saying, if you can't get in after 5 years, tough shit. And, some other, more, people that have empathy were saying, well, no, because, the perception of what we think of someone's career should evolve over time. And, when I look at this year's class, for example, I see Drew Brees. What am I going to argue about his candidacy? Larry Fitzgerald, I guess. A lot of great receivers, and I think the receiver debate is always going to be unsettled. But am I going to tell you Larry Fitzgerald is not a Hall of Famer? Hell no. Luke Kuechly, stone cold baller as well. There's a lot of good people in his position as well that are Hall of Fame worthy. But in this era, once again, I'm not going to argue. Adam Vinatieri, as far as a kicker goes, the guy has so much money in his wallet. Why wouldn't he be in the Hall of Fame? Roger Craig, as I've spoken about, I'm torn on this one. Because, I don't even think Steve Young's a Hall of Famer. People say, well, yeah, he's won a Super Bowl. No, Steve Young won a Super Bowl. Roger Craig, great component on a very stacked team that Bill Walsh and ADD and Carmen Policy put together in a different era. I just don't feel. I think we've got a lot of good players. When I spoke about Henry Carson bitching his way in, or Drew Pearson crying his way in, those guys were good players. But if we're talking Hall of Fame and we're talking true greatness, I don't think this. I think these guys fall below the mark. I mean, I wouldn't put Roger Craig, even what he did, up against the names I just mentioned that went into this class. I don't have much of a problem with anybody in this class, whereas I look at someone like Roger Craig, and once again, if you're going to let Roger Craig in, then why isn't someone like Gary Clark in? Very distinguished in that era. If Roger Craig gets in, why doesn't Joe Jacoby get it? And other folks, especially, when you were talking about letting L.C. Greenwood in. And I feel like if you're going to let Roger Craig in, then of course Ken Anderson, given what a prolific passer he was, didn't win a Super Bowl, but led a team to a Super Bowl. But in that era of the 70s, if we're going to start looking at it that way, if it's not going to be what Dion wants, which I grudgingly agree with, if you ain't truly great, then how the hell is it all true Hall of Fame that truly rewards and celebrates greatness and achievement in the sport? And, don't get me started with Belichick and Mr. Kraft not getting in, which is just the most asinine. I talked about that on Aftershock. It bears mentioning again. I mean, if this is about greatness and all the petty stuff that, what did it really affect? I think I mentioned this on Aftershock. So, okay, I've spent the past couple of days catching up on documentaries. I watched The Rise of the Niners, and I just got done watching Celtic City, or I'm wrapping it up. And it's really insightful, watching these documentaries and these really great teams when it comes down to what greatness is all about. And that's why when I look at the Hall of Fame, it being sort of watered down, is that really what we want? Or should I just get over it myself and just go, this is a reflection of where we are right now? I'm not going to go, all Whitlock and Korean Cosell and say this is the softness of our society. I just think it's the complexity of our society at this point in terms of, how do we reward what we think is great? And is there tiers to this? I don't know. You tell me. I've ran it long enough on this. FTINFX@gmail.com. 541-525-0896. You tell me as far as what the criteria should be for the Hall of Fames. Baseball. I mean, basketball doesn't count. Like I said, you grab a rebound and make 3 or 4 baskets and you're in the Hall of Fame, in the Basketball Hall of Fame. But the NFL Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame used to be a little bit more than that. It used to mean something to me. Okay, folks. We're boogieing right along. When we come back, we'll get us all out of here with the NFL report and some TMCA time. Be back momentarily. All right. We almost at the finish line for episode number 300. Yeah. Foxtrotting in a Foxhole. Your favorite host, Ken Harlan here, coming to you from a superlative Saturday afternoon in the Willamette Valley from Eagles Nest 2, where I'm watching quite a battle on the course with 2 folks led by Mr. Matsuyama, minus 12. And 2 at 11:10. Matt Fitzpatrick and Maverick McNeely and Mr. Thor Bjornsson at -10. Like I said, this is going to be a fun afternoon of golf. Not only today, because we got to play the back nine in most cases, but a full 18 tomorrow. Okay, NFL report. Okay, this is a somber one. This hits very close to home for me. Found myself tearing up quite a bit yesterday, finding out about the Hall of Famer, legendary personality, one of the all-time greats, even if he doesn't have a championship he led, Sonny Jurgensen, Philadelphia Eagles first, but more known for his days in Washington as the Golden Arm, and the stories have come out about that man. You know, he was part of one of my favorite players, along with Larry Brown, when I was growing up. The skins of George Allen, the Over the Hill Gang, only caught the tail end of his career, but yeah, there was a lot of magic about him, and he was obviously a commentator with Sam Huff and Frank Herzog and the DC area in the games with the Redskins and stuff, and so very beloved. Many years in the DMV and in the NFL. I remember when I used to do games on the network, and I always thought his insight was great and loved his competitive spirit. But a wonderful cat. I mean, if you're a Redskin fan of any age, you know what this guy meant. It's like I don't really like to talk about my teams that much at this level of detail. But yeah, it goes beyond that in terms of how beloved Sonny was. You'll definitely be missed. Cheers to a life well lived. Our condolences definitely go out to your family. Hell to the Redskins, Sonny. Enjoy the trip home. Okay. The NFL had its awards night, the red carpet. Should have watched, but didn't. If anything to check out the WAGs. Mm-hmm. And you ladies, I got obviously what you're checking out the eye candy on the other side of the equation. Mm-hmm. But my takeaway here, Matt Stafford winning the MVP. I know Mina Kimes is on the internet doing her little hyena thing about how Drake May should have won it and coming up with some fucking bullshit analytics to explain why. I'm not saying Stafford's a prohibitive MVP, but I'll give it to Drake May. I mean, I'll give it to him over Drake May because Drake May, you ain't gonna earn that close call yet. You put another season like this together again, there'll be no doubt as far as where you are in the hierarchy. So I have no problem there. Garrett winning Defensive Player of the Year. Duh. Bobby Wagner, another commander, obviously made his bones really with the Seahawks, but has done all right as being a leader in the Commanders clubhouse. Gets the Walter Payton Man of the Year, so good for Bobby Wagner. Massive flourish about that, especially coming from somebody on my team. Been kind of waiting to see a skin, or skin, look at me, a commander, with that classic patch that they wear. Okay. Little bookkeeping here. I don't know what's going on with the Seahawks. Obviously they're in the Super Bowl, but this whole thing where you're giving Judy Allen praise for how her stewardship of the team. The team's for sale, or is it not for sale? We know as part of Paul Allen's will that they were the best of the team at some point, and somehow she's still holding on. And I keep hearing the Seahawks are going to be sold right after Super Bowl 50, and then I hear reports that kind of counter that. So, which is it? I guess we'll know in a couple of weeks, won't we? Okay, obviously it's Super Bowl week, and I think this one was a lot more tame than in years past. I think that has a lot to do with the teams involved, as the Patriots and the Seahawks are not going to create the kind of buzz of Super Bowl week in the past. But Goodell, the commissioner, came out in his State of the NFL address. And of course, he's basically giving us the yeah about the whole coaches thing, which I talked about the other day, coach hiring and stuff. Check out Aftershocks to catch my rants on that, Aftershocks 29. But he had this to say that he gives his officiating crews high praise. I get that, where he's coming from. But come on, Roger. Like, you're not fooling us with this Bad Bunny whack show. You're not going to sit here and tell me that the NFL's officials give them high praise. You don't have to pee all over them, but you're not going to sit there and tell me that when on any given telecast, you even got people whose networks pretty much don't want you to criticize the product. They can't help it because the officiating in the No Fun League has been so bad for so freaking long. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So you know the cat, Mensah, for the Vikings, who got let go, the GM. And I know a lot of people were saying that it was a lot of heat for him taking paternity leave at the beginning of camp, which is a very important time, obviously, and some other stuff. And I said, is it really that? Or is it somebody has to walk the plank because you've got an uncertain future with J.J. McCarthy? You had Sam Darnold in the building, and now Sam Darnold led another team to a 14-3 record and is playing for the Lombardi Trophy tomorrow. Could it be more of that than some jive excuse about he took paternity leave and his methods were unorthodox and we were not sure what his work ethic was? If Sam Darnold was in the building, would the brothers still have a job? Probably would. Which makes you ask, is the NFL too rigid in its hierarchy? Probably. But when you have a league full of billionaire owners, no matter how they got their billionaires, when you get to be billionaires, you get to be rigid, you get to be loose, whatever the hell you damn choose. And when your league is one of the biggest sports leagues on the planet, well then. Okay. What do we got here? Oh, somebody asked a great question this week. And I'm not sure I have the answer, and maybe y'all can help me with this. FTINFX@gmail.com. Drop a line, 541-525-0896. But is Vrabel the best player turned coach? As far as players you know, and of course, I guess because we didn't see Tom Landry and Don Shula when they played, it's hard to assess where we know about Vrabel as a hard-nosed player from his days in Pittsburgh, then New England. Yeah, I don't know. That's going to be an interesting question. I'd love to hear from you what you all think. Maybe I'll make that a poll and we can all figure that one out. Yeah. Okay. Brady, his former teammate, making a lot of news this week. And, his post-football career has taken on such a weirdness. Him in the booth, his thing with the the Raiders, breaking up with his wife, and now hanging out with these weird IG, borderline OF girls or not. Who the hell knows? None of my business. But him saying he doesn't have a dog in the fight. I mean, dude, stop being political. I mean, or at least tell us, yeah, I'm kind of pissed off that Mr. Kraft let me walk out of the building and, yeah, they got a statue for me, but, I just don't feel it anymore. But it would be so insulting to me as a fan of the Patriots that somebody who led you to 6 Super Bowls is going to have the temerity to say, oh, I don't really have a dog in the fight. I'm not really rooting for anyone. I get it. You're an owner now, which opens all kinds of cans of sardines as far as objectivity there. But still, you want some rings with them. Obviously you went to Tampa and got another one. But I like guys like Willie McGinnis just saying he ain't having any of that bull jive, that bull crap. You patriot for life means patriot for life. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. I was sitting there thinking, everything's kind of light this week, and I'm just like, there's all kinds of stuff to talk about here. McVay and Snead inking extensions to stay with the Rams longer. No surprise there. Stan Kroenke probably gave him a blank check. But what do you want? And can't blame him, given the kind of money that Stan Kroenke and his people have. And, their desire to keep the Rams as an elite product. Dion and his silly ass son, making the Clown Bowl. Yeah, I'll say something about that momentarily, but just Dion, I can't clown him because it's his boy, and what father wouldn't be, but it's just like, come on. Saying, hey, man, he did something I did. He made the Pro Bowl before I did. The idea of you motherfucking fools, pardon my language, thinking he somehow made this Pro Bowl when he was like a fourth or fifth alternative and trying to make something into it. Skip Bayless sitting here crying about him not being Rookie of the Year, the biggest travesty ever. You all should be ashamed of yourselves. And the harm you're going to do to this poor kid down the road when he really stinks it up, given a full sample next year or the year after that. Okay. NFL really making its global footprint longer, going back to Azteca down there in Mexico City for 3 years. We're going to see a game down under that is confirmed in Melbourne next year. Going to be interesting with the time difference, how they do that. But it's the NFL. And of course, I'll give you one. I started the whole thing with a Commander's tip, and this is an homage to my man Sonny passing away because this is from his era. But the Commanders released a logo with the script, the W script they use on the helmets, but it has spears coming out of it. And oh my God, you can only imagine how that set off the bring back the name crowd foaming at the mouth. And I don't know whether Josh Harris is going through his own, with, how do I say this, dilemmas with the name change. He's a lifelong Washingtonian. Washington grew up going to games at RFK, but has said publicly he likes Commander's name. And he has made references, to the guy, like Wetzel. He was with the Blackfoot tribe, the guy who designed the logo on the old Skins hats. But I love that people are really hoping that at some point the spear helmet they wore in Sonny's days could come back as a regular or alternate helmet. I just go, you folks cannot let this thing go ever, can you? Right? It's just, that's just the way it is. And I get it. I've been a little bit senior on this stuff when I came to this, when I came to the decision to let the Redskins go. And whatever they came with, I would go roll with it. I've been in that mindset, but I have to concede. Watching some of the stuff with Sonny Jurgensen and all the others connected to it, yeah, I got hella sentimental. I'm not saying, oh God, I want this to come back, but it did allow me to have more empathy for these folks that won't let go. Especially, I'm a lifelong Washington fan that's lived far and not been in the DMV, not been at RFK, not been at the dump that we call Northwest Stadium. So, yeah, I got to give these folks a little more slack, is what I've been saying. I think. All right. We've come to that point. The trucks from the foundry have just pulled up, containing the stainless steel bowls of the smelliest varieties that come in complimentary, regular, and XL sizes. And what do we give those out for? For those people whose deeds during the week earn a stainless steel bowl of the smelliest varieties. Their actions during the week, or as we like to say, them being who they be. Consult the episode of The Wire with Tommy Carcetti if you're wondering where I got this from as far as the stainless steel bowls of the smelliest varieties. Well, I'm going to give complimentaries all around and two for the Hall of Shame, two XLs. To the woke sports media. I mean, just playing this really out of tune violin when y'all damn know if this is all about greed, winning now, anyway, anyhow, starting to scream all of this virtue signaling, all of this race baiting, hustling nonsense, when you know what the truth is. Yeah, get you more clicks and get you some shade, I suppose, with amongst yourselves in your own echo chamber. But the rest of us, we're just kind of tired of all this nonsense coming from y'all. And this whole thing with the coaches and even with the Hall of Fame and making it so, I don't know, bringing it up when it doesn't have to be, or not acknowledging what reality is right now, if that makes sense to you. Okay. Complimentaries all around, and another two XLs for the Hall of Shame. For you clowns that decide these things, not letting Mr. Kraft and Belichick in. Are you friggin' kidding me? I think I got sidetracked earlier when I was talking about the rise of the 49ers, why I enjoyed this so much. Because people have to realize something here. And it doesn't get talked about enough. It's one thing to not value Joe Montana enough about how great he truly was, or Bill Walsh. But these guys could have the same numbers that Brady and Belichick would have had. And why do they not? Well, I think Belichick got in the way 3 times. Joe Gibbs denied them another time. They could have easily won in those 4 years and have, what would that be, 8 rings? And that's how good, with people who diminish Belichick and go, oh man, Brady did this. Not only the Patriots have a good defense, those Giants teams arguably may have had the best defense of all time, because I know it prevented those guys from having 8 rings. And I would say my Redskins back then could have had 4 or 5, if not 6, if it hadn't been for Belichick in that defense. LT obviously had a lot to do with it. And Harry Carson and Carl Banks and some other people who brought the wood, Leonard Marshall. But still, people who, say, yeah, Belichick can wait. Why should he have to wait? And what Mr. Kraft has done in his time owning the Patriots. I heard somebody say that we should never put a owner in the Hall of Fame because we don't pay to see an owner, but an owner created the product that allows you to see it. See, people need their internet privileges taken away when they say stupid ass shit like this. Yeah, an owner shouldn't even be in the Hall of Fame. Okay, so what? George Halas, the father of the game, shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame according to that kind of fucking stupid logic. Okay, enough of that. Yeah, we're cooking. 2 more XLs for the Hall of Shame and complimentaries all around. To the NCAA for not having a backbone, for not being adults, where we can have these fools who've already played pro sports sitting, doing everything they can to get back into school so they can get some of the NIL scratch, play against kids, and maybe have a Hail Mary of a professional career. I agree with Coach JB, Smitty, and the others. Get all these old fucking people trying to hang on, playing 6 and 7 years till they 28. It's just made a mockery of the sport. We can be better, NCAA. And I'm not trying to be harsh as far as denying people. There are opportunities out there, right? You just like the low-hanging fruit. and all the perks that come with being back on campus and being a big man on campus. Nah, fuck all that shit. Mm-mm. Okay. I'm going to give 2XLs. We're giving a lot of doubles out here. Okay, gotta go on pause. Okay. Had to take that call. My goodness. So lost my place. Like I said, the NCAA, and I'm going back, man. But let me get now to Shador. I'm going to give 2XLs. We're talking about how he dominated. Dominated what? Mostly garbage time. Even the fluke wins that you got, how much it was about you will always be in question, and you're gonna have the audacity to say you fucking dominated last year? I get you being Deion's king and the kid, and the self confidence you might have. But this is why we think you're a clown, and we think your dad's a clown for not slapping the piss out of you for saying stupid ass shit like this. But hell, he believes it. We're going to give 2XLs to Skip Bayless for having the audacity to say, oh man, this is the biggest crime ever that Shador didn't win Rookie of the Year. And that he's going to revolutionize the Pro Bowl. Nobody gave a shit about that stupid flag football game. And hell, I didn't see any highlights for them. Yeah, he really revolutionized it. And come on, Skip, But the fact that only after they chased your ass from the network, making ridiculous takes like this is the only way someone's even going to pay attention to your irrelevant ass at this point. Pardon my language. I'm getting all pissed off in this session. Just delusional takes coming from Skip Bayless. Good grief. I'm going to give a regular, wow, I know, to Jackson Hayes. Getting a game suspension for pushing a mascot? Come on, bro. And your lawyer trying to play some race car bullshit? She gets one too. Just like, wow. I gotta give it XL to Yasiel Puig. Remember Yasiel Puig? That guy who was supposed to be the next Babe Ruth, but ended up truly being a wet firecracker in the bathtub. He got sentenced yesterday. He's involved in some pretty ugly shit. He's looking at 20 years. And I'm thinking to myself, you gotta get an XL. No, we're gonna give you 2. When you went from somebody that had a promising career as a star to you're gonna spend 20 years having, toting around somebody's little bee in the Gray Bar Hilton. Come on, man. Okay. Oh, yeah. And then I gotta give Eddie Lacy 2XLs. Getting busted with a BAC 4 times over the legal limit. It's called Uber, bro. Lastly, I forget what her name is, but the OnlyFans hoe that tried to get attention to Drake May, getting his DMs, and Drake May's happily married. You get an XL for being disgusting as well. Okay, folks, we have reached the end of the line. We will see you soon this week. Stay safe, stay sane, enjoy the adult beverages, enjoy the Super Bowl. Oh, wait, my Super Bowl pick. I'm going against the grain. I'm going to say in a weird one, New England 31, Seattle 23. Stay sane, safe, avoid the bracelets. We'll see you soon.